Hey guys, welcome to the Titanium Vault. I'm your host, RJ Bates III. And today I think I'm sitting down with the most badass guest I've ever had. I mean, this dude's an MMA fighter. He just told me he's going to go hunt on horseback on like some mountain river trail with no return. Like, holy shit, I'm slightly afraid about this interview. But no, Nathan, what's going on, man?
RJ, bro, so good to see you again and connect with you this morning. We've had basically a podcast before the podcast. You know what
I
I mean?
know. You asked me, you were like, should we be recording this? It's like, probably.
Probably, yes. And yes, hunting elk on horseback in the middle of the mountains is awesome. And yes, it's called the Frank Church Wilderness River of No Return, which, by the way, is that not like the coolest name ever for, a place?
I mean, if you want to brag about doing something, you do that just because of the name.
Yeah.
Like, I conquered it because of the name.
Yeah, it's crazy. And I kid you not. So when you get in there, you drive to the middle of nowhere and then you get on a little tiny plane with four, large men, or, I think in this case, it'll be three, the guide, myself, and a pilot, and tiny plane, bush plane you in. So your wings are actually lower in the plane than the mountains are tall. So you're flying through the mountains. They like bank really hard as you come into this little, mountain runway. And I'm like, why are we banked so hard? They're like, we're looking for elk or, horses or some idiot who parked a car or a plane on the runway, which, makes total sense. And
Right.
then you haul down in there and jump on a horse for 7 days.
Man, I'm looking forward to seeing the post on social media about your experience there. Are you going to get some videos?
Yes, 100%. I'll have
Okay.
videos, and it's just one of the most beautiful places. I think a lot of times us hard charging entrepreneurs, we have such a hard time turning things off.
Yep.
Whether it's our cell phone or our brain or whatever. Well, let me tell you, ride a horse on a mountain trail with 1,000 feet of elevation drop, 3 feet off the side. It'll get your attention. You know what I mean? Like and there's no cell service there, so there's no way to jump on a Zoom or get it's it's all encompassing and all and beautiful, just such a beautiful place. So,
well, I think it's been like 4 or 5 years since you've been on the podcast. So tell us what it is that you're doing in real estate investing nowadays, because I think it's a little bit different from what you were doing back then.
Yeah, absolutely. When we chatted the last time, we had a pretty large turnkey company, and we were doing 150 deals a year. And it's one of those things. Actually, I'm doing a talk tonight, as a matter of fact. So talking about scaling your company and scaling your business, and it was one of those things that I learned the hard way, where initially I thought I wanted this, big business. We had 16, 18 employees. We had, multiple 6-figure overhead and the multi-million-dollar office and the whole deal. And all of a sudden I realized this is not what I wanted. And so we have really focused now on more joint venture partnerships, relationships that we do deals with. We raised a fund, so we raised $4+ million in our fund, and we do deals in and out of that, and building some new construction, doing some actual ground up development, and then focused on just doing less but better deals. So instead of we were making 15 or 20,000 a deal, let's do 30, 40,000 a deal. And do a handful of them, have a smaller team where we can actually, I'm legitimately making more money doing a lot less deals. And then lastly, focused on still building wealth in the rental. Actually, I was having this conversation with a friend of mine who's probably in that, I don't know, $8-10 million net worth range just yesterday, I think it was, the day before. And he said, Nathan, I've made mostly all my cash flow from active flipping, and I've made almost all my wealth from holding.
Yeah.
And I thought that was just such an interesting, and you and I were just having this conversation, right? So I've really been thinking a lot about that from like scaling both net worth and cash flow and how to really do that in the most efficient way possible.
So I want to go back to you talking about where you were, and then you said, "Hey, I found out it wasn't what I wanted."
Mm-hmm.
Because I think there's a lot of people right now listening where maybe on their journey, they haven't thought about what they really want.
Yeah.
Sometimes when we think about starting our real estate business, a wholesaling business, a rental portfolio, it's about the vanity metrics. It's about
Mm-hmm.
how many deals, it's about how much money I'm making. But we don't reverse engineer it from how much money do I need to live
Yeah.
the life that I want? It's like, well, no, I heard, so and so on a podcast say they're doing 50 deals a month. So that must be what I need to scale to, right? So,
Yes.
what about your business was it that you didn't like?
Great question. Well, as you have more employees and as you have a bigger team, I think there's kind of a threshold for each individual person, but this is the place where from a leadership and management perspective, I wasn't having any fun because I was dealing more with people than doing deals. And I like doing deals. That's fun for me. And I don't like dealing with drama. And I didn't, and also just as you add more people, you figure you and I are talking. So there's, one direction. Well, we add one person. Now this is a far more complex conversation.
Yep.
Add another person, now you have all those triangles between all those people. And so what I found was we were having to do more work to make less money because we had such a big overhead and so many mouths to feed. And RJ, by the way, I'm still good friends with a lot of those people who worked for us on the team because I loved them and they loved, me and our company and what we were doing. But at the end of the day, you nailed it on the head. In Tim Ferriss's 4 Hour Work Week, I remember reading that book a long time ago, and he talks about how people want to have like the fancy car or whatever. And he's like, it's one thing to go spend $100,000 on a car. It's another thing you could literally go rent that car, or lease that car for $1,000, or go on Turo and drive it for the weekend. And it doesn't cost as much as you think it costs.
Right.
And so that's the same thing that I have kept coming back to, which is, okay, well, if I have this company that's kicking out X number of dollars, let's say it's a lower number, 10 grand, and I have the rental Airbnb company, it's kicking off 10 grand, whatever, just simple math. I mean, really, RJ, how much money do we need a month? And we have obviously far higher months than that, but I'm
Right.
just in simple numbers, simple math. How much more do we need than, 10, 20, 30 grand? Like everything else, we can invest back into doing whatever we're doing.
Yep. And you know what is funny about you bringing that up is so often when I interview people, we come from such humble beginnings.
Yeah.
Very rarely do I interview someone and they're like, yeah, my dad,
Yeah.
left me $10 million and I just rolled into like running this, empire. It's
Yep.
always like, dude, I had nothing. I learned the hard way. I bootstrapped my business and now here we are and we're somewhat successful.
Yep.
Where do we forget along the way those humble beginnings?
Right.
We talk about doing $100,000 a month like it's us making $1,000 a week back in our humble beginnings.
I so distinctly remember sitting at my first house that my wife and I bought, thinking like, gosh, if I could only make $6,000 a month, like we would be golden.
Right.
And now, like you said, like, truly, if it's a deal making 25 grand, I don't even think about it. We make, over $1 million in one of the developments. And it's like, it's lost its excitement in the same way. But I've found the actual piece of this is, how am I actually doing a better job as a human, as a dad, as a investor, as a steward of the money that I do have? And that question has been driving me to make different choices.
I love the fact that you said we're doing less deals but making more money.
Yeah.
Deal volume count is a vanity metric. I want everyone to understand that. Because the reason why we're in this business is to make money. That's the reason why you start a company.
Yeah.
And it's about the amount of money you're making. So what changes did you make where you said, hey, I'm going to do less deals, but I'm going to make sure that they make more money? Because I think that's a hard mental shift to make as an entrepreneur, where I'm sure you're having to pass on some deals because you're saying, hey, it doesn't meet our criteria.
Yeah, 100%. So there's a couple things. First of all, going from 16 people on the flipping side, we now have just a couple, and I don't need a bunch of people. I have this example in this talk I'm doing tonight where we're talking about doing, like, okay, you do 15 deals at 20 grand, but you have a $200,000 overhead. You're still not making, comparatively, how many deals to do 4 deals and you have a $5,000 overhead. You can make 100 grand on 4 deals.
Right.
So, and honestly, we're seeing a bunch of them that are much higher profit margin than that, just because we've been more selective. And then the other thing I did was, instead of trying to go hire out contractor after contractor that is like the bane of everyone's existence, I found the best contractor in my market and I just partner with him. And so I find the deal, I fund the deal, I underwrite the deal, and he runs everything. And so we're splitting profit in the deal, but
right.
It's such a simpler process, where before we had an estimator and we had a project manager and we had a construction manager and acquisitions manager and sales manager and all these people, which, hey, you have a big business, more power to you. I'm so much happier not doing that.
Well, you and I are alike in that, because we've gone from super small to, I was told, not by an individual, by society, social media, told me I needed to scale my business. So we scaled, and we scaled to the point where I almost killed myself.
Yep.
And then we came back down to reality and we said, man, this is so much better to have a small, lean team that we can make decisions. We don't feel this obligation that we have to do this deal just to keep people busy.
Yes.
Just to not piss off this acquisitions manager, right?
Yes.
So many different decisions are made there. So now that you're doing that, do you feel fulfilled where you still have that pressure from society? Like, you're a part of we're hanging out at Family Mastermind, right?
Yeah.
How do you overcome the pressure of society where it was like, Nathan, you were doing so many more deals, are you going to scale back up? There's that pressure of, hey, you used to do this. Are you going to get back to that level, even though you're happier now? Do you feel that pressure?
I don't. I feel a different pressure, and I've really focused, I would say, I don't know, somewhere between 6 months and a year. I've really had kind of a personal renaissance with a focus on my daily routine, what my happiness is, and doing a better job. And let me tell you, I'm not perfect. I have crappy days. I have deals that go sideways still. This is, I think, part of life. But what I've realized is, I start every day, I go on a walk. So, for instance, normally I don't set an alarm. RJ, we're recording this fairly early in the morning. I was up a little earlier. I still got my multiple miles in this morning. I listened to a book, Ryan Holiday. This is the 3rd book this week. So, and that's not like my vanity metric now is like, how much time did I spend getting better, learning, like being more content in my life, and finding joy, and also recognizing places. And I think this is where so many people have our time, is they have something that's not working, but they're a slave to it. And I never again want to be a slave to something. I want to be able to see it and say, this isn't working. I'm making a change. I have the power to do that, and I'm doing it right now. And I think that's way more powerful than any number of deals or any number of, amount of money.
I love that, man. And you mentioned that we're recording this podcast fairly early in the morning. This is a change for me. I'm naturally, most of my life, I've not been a morning person. But you have kids, you become a morning person.
Yep.
They make you a morning person.
Yeah.
But you talk about that morning routine. I'm now making it a part of my morning routine to record a podcast with someone like you, someone like Brad Chandler, someone like Scott Morse. The reason why is after doing the podcast for 6 years, I can tell you, man, almost after every interview, I am so energized and pumped up where I'm like, you guys as the guests, like I listen to y'all's journeys and I'm like, oh, I'm so ready to kill the day. But it was weird when I would do the podcast at 2 p.m. because then I come out at 3 p.m. like, well, the day's already kind of gone. So now by starting my morning early, by getting this in, it's a change for me. Like you said, you read the book, you get your miles in. This is a new part of my morning routine where it's like, I essentially just get to sit down with Nathan Brooks this morning and get pumped up. Like you're my motivation for the day, man. So I love that morning routine.
I love that. By the way, that is a very cool way to say it. And also, by the way, the thing that the other elephant in that, at least for me, was like, hey, you're staying up late, going out, partying, doing whatever. Like, of course you're having a hard time getting up early. So if you set up your day the day before, you are in such a better place for the next day, right?
Yep. And it's funny, man. I'm making like conscious decisions at night where I'm saying, hey, instead of staying up an extra hour to watch another stupid TV show on Netflix, I'm going to go to sleep so I can still get the amount of sleep that I need because I get to wake up and do this. So this is replacing an hour of Netflix.
Dude, and think about this. How many of those things? Okay, so I was looking at this last night. On your phone, it shows you all your metrics, right? How many times you picked your phone up, how much time you were on it, all these things. And it is amazing to me when I'm looking at my phone last night, and I think on average it was like 120, 130 times I picked up my phone on average every day. And I'm like, this is insane. That's insane. So just like in Netflix, just like Facebook or social media or anything on it, like we find all these things to give our attention to and not give any conscious thought about it. Like we're going to really binge watch another, 4 hours of this show. Is that really what I'm going to spend that time on?
Dude, think about the change for you when you're in Idaho.
Oh, yeah.
On average, 120 to 130 times a day, you're picking up your phone. Like just out of habit, you're going to have like a downtime.
Yeah.
You're going to reach to look at your phone.
100%.
And you're going to be like, oh, there's no service, and put it right back in your pocket.
Yeah, it doesn't work. Like, what are you going to do?
It's a habit. It's a habit at this point. I don't even, dude, there are things that I do on my phone. I don't even know why I'm doing them. I'm like, I just did this 3 minutes ago.
Yes.
Why am I doing it again?
It's terrible. So I looked at that last night, looked at my wife's last night. We talked about it and talked with the kids about it last night. And I literally wake up this morning and I'm like, one.
Right.
And so, but you know what? That's great because I'm going to start looking at it. So here's another thing. My wife and I started doing our Financial Friday. So every Friday we now run a P&L for our household.
Ooh.
And we actually look at what did we spend, what's on the credit card, what's in the bank account, what's on our personal financial statement. So it's cool. I have this literally sitting right here. So we have a folder and we started going through. So it literally go through net worth and date. And each week now we're going through, and this has all that bank statements and credit card. And so we literally go through what did we actually spend? What did we actually make? What do we actually have in the bank What is our net worth? What properties did we buy? And, you know, I've said this for years. What you put your focus on is where you get your result. But how many of those things, you know, they keep finding me. I'm like, hey, you're not actually doing that. Like, what do we need to do to actually be a better steward or know
Let me
better?
ask you this.
Yeah.
What is the goal with doing that? Like, do y'all have an objective where it's like, hey, every week we want the bank account to go up, we want our net worth to be going up? What is the objective there?
Yeah, it's tracking. So we would have months where we would just put like ungodly amounts of money on the credit card, and you'd be like, at the end of the month, you'd be like, what? Like, what? We just did what?
Right.
And I was so frustrated and having this feeling of like, whether it's blaming her or, you know, doing something stupid. And so now I was like, okay, so it's a spending and it keeping us accountable to our budget. And number two is tracking net worth. So we want to see like, okay, are we consistently hitting our, you know, cash flow metrics of income? And then are we consistently watching that net worth go up? And interestingly enough, I have watched that net worth go up. I want to say, you know, $500,000-$600,000 in a handful of months just by being focused on how many deals we're buying and like what were they for, how did we acquire them, and I have that like that kid joy now on Thursday afternoon, which today's Thursday we're recording.
Right.
I'm excited to see, okay, well, how do we do? Like, let's go back and look. What properties did we add to the portfolio? You know, these sort of things that we are being consistent about.
I love that. So speaking of net worth, you've got flips going on and you're also taking down long-term rentals, short-term, mid-term rentals to build that net worth, right?
Correct.
How are you making the decisions on which properties you're keeping and which ones are you flipping? Is it just simply based off of price point and cash flow, or are there actual decisions made there on, hey, every X amount we're keeping for ourselves?
Well, I'm still tweaking the exact thing with that because I feel like every 3 months I have a clear vision of what I want to do with it. But so for instance, like even 6 months ago, we would add a rental that was, say it had 60,000-70,000 in equity in the house, but it only added $200 of cash flow. We were adding that to the portfolio. And now I'm not doing that. I'm selling the house, I'm taking the cash. And, you know, for instance, in our short-term rental, midterm rental, we average $1,000 to $2,000 per door per month net. And so it's like, okay, RJ, would I rather have the $500,000 house with $100,000 in equity making $2,000 a month, or would I rather have the $250,000 house with, you know, 60 grand or whatever the number is, with $200 a month in cash flow? Like, I think that the answer is pretty obvious.
Yeah, it's a no-brainer. My question to you would be, is there a level of concern with these short-term rentals where, hey, at some point in time, the government is just going to get so involved across the board where, hey, you're stuck with a $500,000 house that you can't cash flow anymore because they've essentially shut down short-term rentals? Is that a concern of yours?
It's certainly a concern. It's something I think about. And in Kansas City, for instance, I mean, all of a sudden in a 2-month period, they went from being basically unregulated. I mean, they had some regulations, but they weren't enforced, to doing an all-out ban on short-term rentals virtually in all of the actual Kansas City part. There's tons of outside, you know, city areas. And so yes, 100%. So we look at areas that we know that they've already made regulation decisions. And the other thing too is we had 2 different properties that we bought that were in that, you know, 350 to 500,000 value range, and we switched them from short term to midterm, and we have basically done 95% of our projected cash flow as a short-term rental as a midterm, because we had a killer house in a killer location that was beautiful, and we had nice furniture. And so I have another friend of mine locally here that's doing the same thing, where nice house, midterm rental. And think about who needs that. Insurance, people building a house, somebody has a fire, you're traveling for, 2 months for work. You want to live in an awesome place.
Right.
And so we found that the midterms actually have done virtually as well as our short term, and there's less management as far as the turnovers.
Interesting.
So that's where my head's been at, is continuing to perform with those. And here's the other thing is, I think a lot of people have gotten hurt in the Airbnb because they took that same kind of crappy 3-bed, 1-bath rental and just a normal house in a normal neighborhood.
Right.
And so you have, thousands of 3-bedroom, 1,000 square foot houses. All mine are in like the prime spots, prime location. They're a higher end home in a higher end location. And so it's a different avatar.
I like that. Talk about the midterm rentals, because this is, to me at least, somewhat of a newer term that's being thrown around over the past couple of years. And it was kind of like, all right, is this going to stick? And it seems like it's becoming more and more popular.
Yeah.
Where are you advertising these properties, and how are you finding the person who, house burned down or something like that, where they need it for these 30, 45 days?
Yeah. I mean, and we regularly get, 6-month bookings, 5-month bookings, 2-month bookings. We had one that in this area called Brookside, which is a, awesome part of town in KC. And we put that on midterm, and in 18 hours, we had a 6-month booking, and it was like $30,000, like that.
Right.
30 grand. And so we've put them on literally on Zillow. We've had a network of professionals. So whether it's an insurance company or, like we've had multiple Royals players and connected with the big organizations like that, Royals, Chiefs, Sporting KC here locally, because, those guys get a contract. They come and live in KC for, 4, 5, 6, 8 months or whatever.
Right.
And so we've had multiple players stay in our properties. And then, there's people building a home or whatever, and they're looking for that. So we've started to build that network of people and relationships that are the ones, searching those things out. And we're also talking about doing some, actual, paid marketing and advertising behind some, web-based, marketing website, so forth. But honestly, RJ, we haven't had to do that because we've continually gotten them booked, continually gotten them a place before we even have had to do that.
That's amazing. So want to transition away from that and move on to what you guys are doing right now in the education space. And I got to tell you a story with your coaching partner here, Mr. Gavin Timms.
Yeah.
So me and Gavin, we met one time. Has he told you about the time that we met?
No, he hasn't.
Okay. So me and Gavin, we met, and Gavin's a character.
Yeah.
We met at the Batch Christmas party. Okay. So the Batch Leads Christmas party.
Okay.
And Jesse Burrell, the CEO and owner of Batch, says, the after party's at my house. So we go to his house. Come to find out, Jesse didn't tell anybody else that the after party was at his house. He only told like 4 of us. So there wasn't really an after party. It was more of like just a couple friends hanging out.
Hanging out, right?
And he had just finished building his pickleball court in his backyard.
Amazing.
So what are 4 grown men in suits and ties going to do at midnight after a Christmas party in Phoenix, Arizona? We're going to play pickleball.
100%.
So it's Jesse Burrell and Gavin Timms on a team, and it's me and quite possibly the most athletic looking person ever, David Dodge. I'm looking at David.
You're like, come on, bro.
And I'm like, bro, we're going to kill them. This is over.
Yeah.
Jesse and Gavin destroyed us all night. We played like 12 games, and I never won. And I'm good. I'm just throwing that out there. I'm good. I still have a bone with David Dodge. You're the worst pickleball player of all time, David Dodge, if you're watching this. But Gavin killed it, bro.
Do you know Gavin is a former golf pro? Like that's what he made his living as a professional golfer and a golf pro.
I'm pretty sure that Jesse Burrell could make more money as a professional pickleball player than he could as the CEO of Batch Leads. He makes money there. It was crazy. It was a lot of fun, but that was the first time I met Gavin. So talk to me about what you guys are doing. And listen, we call this episode How to Accelerate Your REI Journey. So talk about what you guys are doing for that space right now.
Yeah, for sure. By the way, that's an awesome story. I can only picture being in suits and playing pickleball. Were you wearing dress shoes or did you take them off?
Dude, no, I wore dress shoes, and let me tell you, I wore them out.
Oh,
had no idea, and then I got home, and it's like there was a hole in the bottom of one of them. So
I believe that. I believe that the dress shoe thing and doing anything athletic is that's difficult.
Yeah.
So yeah, Gavin and I have connected together and launched Real Estate Accelerator, which is our coaching platform, a coaching program. And, it's one of those things where I've done real estate now for, gosh, I hate when these things like 15 years, bro, like, which is just bonkers when you think about it. But I know what an impact it's made in my life. And so I love talking about it. I love sharing. I love doing podcasts like this with you. And I love to help other people do that. And so we came together. We've built an awesome course and an awesome program and helping people who want to do what I do. So the buy and hold, the fix and flip, understanding how to underwrite them and how to buy them, finance them, negotiate with wholesalers, all these sort of things that, you and I now take for granted, right? We can do it in our sleep. And so it's been a unique experience for me going back through and working on thinking about those things that if I had to do it new today, how would I have to teach myself or, how would I teach somebody else? And so we've built an incredible system and incredible coaching program around it.
I love that, man. I had the honor of speaking at Wholesaling Live this past weekend, and I was asked to specifically give a speech about how to talk to sellers for acquisitions.
Okay.
So I get up, and I get 30 minutes, and I told the MC, Eric Klein, I said, hey, I'm really good about, being on time. I'm not one of those speakers you're going to have to yank off the stage.
Yeah.
Well, I go through my speech, finish 27 minutes. So I got 3 minutes. And I'm like, hey, I'm going to ask some Q&A. I got 3 minutes. Question. Final question. Front row. She says, this all sounded great, but how do I determine what my maximum allowable offer is?
Oh, yeah.
And it was one of those moments where just what you were talking about right there, the things that we take for credit or for granted. Here's the thing. I wasn't talking about that, but the mindset of the student, which is all right, RJ, I can repeat everything that you just told me to say.
Yep.
What's the number, though? How do I know? So you're absolutely right, man. I love that you brought that up. When you're talking to your students, it's, hey, I'm going back to 15 years ago. What were the questions I had?
Yeah.
And how do we point people in the right direction on making the right decisions, how they talk to sellers, like you said, negotiating with wholesalers. I've never heard somebody say that before, but it's an important thing. If you're going to buy rentals, you're going to buy flips, you need to understand how to talk to a wholesaler.
You do. And, we have a whole section that's, talking to a wholesaler versus talking to a realtor. And it is a different conversation.
Yeah.
It's a different avatar of a person and they think about real estate differently. And it's been interesting for me too, as a coach, because I'm sure like you, we spend lots of money a year on coaching and on, mentorship and masterminds and all this kind of stuff. And you get back into the mindset of like, okay, when I first started doing this, how did I figure this out? Like, how did I learn to have all these different relationships, or who to call for what kind of deal, or, and so it's been a learning experience. But I will say the thing that you just mentioned, the maximum allowable offer, even from a buy and hold, fix and flip, I mean, when I think about the learning and I think about the complexity of all those problems, I just have to remember, like, okay, a student asks a question. I can't use the Nathan of 15 years of doing real estate. I have to use the Nathan of when it was 15 years ago.
Right.
And I was trying to figure out how to actually do those deals. And guess what it does for us too? It makes us better, right? It makes us better as an investor. It makes us better as a coach, because then we have to go back through and say, okay, what are the actual steps? How simple can I make them? And then how simple can I make them so I can explain them, teach them, and make them in a way that I know that I've learned it and I can execute it.
Love that. Are you in your program? Are you teaching people how to essentially own real estate? Like, hey, this is part of the program. Like, we want you to create that net worth that you're talking about.
Yes, absolutely. And there's definitely a focus on the buy and hold, and then flip one to get more cash, and buy and hold. And, what's interesting to me is I think they're both important. And the more I think about this, the more I recognize having one, the majority of one is like, you need them both. So if you're only focused on flipping, you can make a lot of cash, but you have a huge tax liability, and you haven't really grown the net worth, other than, if you said $1 million in a bank account. And if you buy and hold everything, you might have, multi-million-dollar net worth, but you're still not making much in cash flow. And every student ever says, I want to make 10 grand a month. Well, at $100 or $200 a month in cash flow, you need a lot of properties to do that, And so I've really thought about this a lot in my own portfolio, in my own, business, to where, hey, we're going to flip a couple and we're going to keep one, but a good one. We're going to flip a couple, we're going to keep one. And then that way, it makes it simple, and it also balances out that cash flow, because we have to have cash flow, we have to have revenue. And having a revenue first mentality, which means I get the benefit of buying this rental by having the cash that I just generated from the sale. And so then we can red light, green light that as we buy them and sell them, and buy them and keep them.
It's funny. The further I go along in this entrepreneur journey, and the more people I talk to, I feel like the more of us are starting to say the opposite of what society kind of tells us to say.
Yes.
Like, for example, the first thing I said during my speech about talking to sellers is you start with no. Embrace the word no.
Yeah.
You need to tell more sellers no, and then be picky about which ones you're buying, not trying to convince every seller to say yes to you. And then here you are talking about, the difference between you have to sell some property so you get cash, to then buy to get your net worth. And it's so funny because there's always this saying about, hey, you need to buy real estate so you can have the depreciation, you can have the cash flow. Like, that's why you're buying the rentals, so you can have the cash flow. And it's like, no. What did the guy that has 8-9 figures say to you? He said no. The buy and holds were my net worth, my wealth, not the cash flow.
Yep. Exactly.
You're essentially just hoping it just pays the mortgage off.
Right. I mean, and that's the thing. And when I look at over time, the ones, I was sitting early on in my real estate career, I was sitting with a commercial broker, and he was telling this old timer story of like, I didn't know anyone that went broke that held for 30 years.
Right.
Like, okay, I'm tracking, right? And at the same time, we have to recognize that, hey, we need that active income. We need to produce it somewhere. And so, and then really, how much do we need? So this comes back to this, beginning part of our conversation today, which is, all right, be specific, write it down, like have a specific number so that you know what do you actually need. And then there's a line that showed up, I think from Tom Cole, my coach, and he said, stop moving the goalpost.
Yep.
And stop moving the goalpost. Like, at what point do we keep moving that and we keep chasing after this thing rather than putting a line in the sand and saying, it's okay. I don't need to double my deals every year. Like, I'm good.
I love that. I will say, going back to the guy that said he's never seen anyone go broke by holding for 30 years.
Yeah.
Because I agree with him. There's one thing I would say to that. You could go broke holding for 30 years in Texas.
How so?
With the property taxes. Well, we were talking about
yeah.
before, where, I mean, there's properties I bought 5, 6, 7 years ago where they had those, the cash flow numbers that we needed. Hey, we're actually walking out with like $300-400 a month.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden the property taxes have gone up. The rent rates can't go any higher. And you could go broke with those. That's where you have to transition to midterm rentals, long-term rentals. But point being, he's absolutely right. You hold on to real estate, you're going to be, for 30 years, you're going to be just fine. And we see that all the time when we're buying properties for people that have owned it for 30 years.
100%. 100%. And
dude, that's one of my favorite lines I use as sellers, where they tell me, I've owned this for 30 years, blah, blah, blah. You know how many properties? I'm like, you're my hero.
Yeah.
You're who I want to be 30 years from this moment.
Yep. Exactly.
And honestly, if you use that line, you want to talk about instant rapport, people love it when you compliment them.
Oh, 100%. And the no thing that you mentioned earlier as well. It's so interesting because no actually has way more power than yes.
Mm-hmm.
And in that sales training and in that sales understanding, in those conversations, like, how many times have you had this conversation which says, hey, you can make a decision, yes or no, either one is okay. I'm not here to pressure you. Just, a maybe is a no, and we can make a decision, move forward together. It's like you take all the power away, all the pressure away, that like, you're going to have to say yes.
I love that. I don't know what just happened there. It was like John Martinez just walked in the middle of our interview and he his closing line. I love that. Shout out to the man, the myth, the legend, John Martinez. He taught us a lot of those lines right there, and that all of us still to this day use. Nathan, for the people that are listening, they want to learn more about you. Where can they learn about, is it Real Estate Accelerator? Is that how we're saying it?
Yep, exactly. Real Estate Accelerator. Honestly, if you're listening to this, shoot me a message. I want to hear from you directly. You can connect with me on any social media platform at Nathan Brooks REI. It's the same one on all of them. And would love to hear from you. Love to help. Love to point you in the right direction. And certainly, if we can help you in a Real Estate Accelerator and help you, buy and hold, fix and flip, then let's do that too.
Love it, man. Also, as we're wrapping up here, I just want to say you're one of the few people that I've had the pleasure of running across in this industry. We've never met in person. We're about to. We've never met in person, but we did the podcast 4 or 5 years ago. And as we were setting up to do this second round, I saw that somewhere in there, it was like probably 2 years after our interview, you just sent me a message out of nowhere. And you said, hey, man, just want to let you know I love you and I appreciate you and I'm thinking about you. Keep doing what you're doing. And looking back, man, it probably means more to me today than it did during that moment. And I just wanted to give you this shout out because first and foremost, I don't think men in general do enough of that. And especially entrepreneurs don't do enough of that. Building each other up, reaching out, giving a kind word. You never know what somebody's going through. And I don't know why you said it that day. Maybe it was something you saw on social media or something like that. Or maybe it's just, hey, unprompted, and you were truly just thinking about me. But I want to say thank you, man. And I appreciate you leading from the front on that aspect of things because we need more of those types of actions in this world.
Oh, man, that's well, thank you for saying that. And I appreciate that. And I do really want, truly want to live from the front, start with gratitude, share love. It's important. And so, yes, thank you for sharing that. And hopefully that inspires other people to do the same thing because, in a world full of, awful news stories and people complaining about everything, we get to put into the universe whatever we want to create. And so that's my mission, is to put more love in the universe for sure.
And it's crazy. You never know when the message is going to impact somebody.
Yeah.
I think you sent me that message in like 2020, somewhere around there. And I read it again in 2023 because I was sending you a message about this podcast.
Yeah.
And I was like, holy cow. I remember when he said this, but it got forgotten in time. And to see it again, it made another impact on me. So thank you, man. All right, guys. That's this week's episode. Nathan, really appreciate having you on for the second time, man. Hey, if you enjoyed today's episode, make sure you leave us a 5-star review. If you're watching on YouTube, give us a like. And like Nathan said, reach out to them, let them know that you appreciated this interview today, and find out more about Real Estate Accelerator. Appreciate you, Nathan.
Appreciate you too, brother.